Welcome everyone to the March 5th, 2024 Agenda Review Meeting. At this time, I will turn it over to Director Brooks. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I just have a few minor updates to share with you this morning before we get into our agenda. Just so you all are aware, we have submitted our budget and work program requests to both the city and county for consideration. I will keep you updated as those reviews progress. I also wanted to share with you that there has been a slight change in how we will be reviewing right-of-way closures for the city of Knoxville. So as the county does, the county takes their right-of-way closures directly to county commission, and city will also be taking a similar path. Staff will still be involved in the intake of all those applications, the processing of those applications, and assisting city engineering with the administration, and also providing our comments as part of the process, but those will go directly to city council. That was effective March 1st. We have hired a new planner, which I'm really excited about. This person won't be starting for a little while. It'll be a recent graduate, but he will be joining the transportation group in early summer, and I look forward to introducing you to him at that time. We are currently recruiting for a new communications assistant and hope to make an offer soon on that position. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our guest speaker today. John Livengood is he's coming down, is a transportation engineer. He focuses on active transportation infrastructure for the city of Knoxville, and he has worked for the city of Knoxville Engineering Department for 17 years, and in his current position as alternative transportation engineer for the last 10 years. He has a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of Tennessee, and he is going to be sharing with you an overview of the city's recently awarded grant funding under the Safe Streets for All program. Thanks, John.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to speak about the Safe Streets for All grant that the city recently got. A little background, back in 2023, Knox Planning and the city worked together with some community stakeholders, and we produced two Vision Zero plans, one for the area and one for the city. And those were completed in June of 2023, and then the city then applied for a Safe Streets for All grant in July 23. This past December, the city was awarded a $8 million grant, so that's for $10 million of projects. So I'm going to go a little over what our grant entails. We are doing studies, and we are also using the grant funds for construction. So as far as studies, we are going to do a speed management plan, and our study identified high injury networks throughout the city. So that's roadways that have excessive number of crashes. So the speed management plan is going to look at all those high injury networks and make speed recommendations on those roadways. We are also going to update our bike facilities plan. The city had a bike facilities plan created in 2015. And we have made a lot of progress with bike facilities, but it's time to update the plan. Thinking has changed a little, so now we're going to focus a lot more on protected bike lanes in this plan, where the previous one was really just about trying to build out an initial network. This update should really focus on making an all ages network. Also really looking at intersections, because that's where most crashes occur between motor vehicles and cyclists. The funding also is going to help or allow the city to create a reporting dashboard. This will allow the public to keep up with the projects the city is implementing for Vision Zero. The dashboard is also going to have some behind the scenes features that allow city engineering to do advanced analytics on crash data, so we can better target projects. We are also going to be doing what was called feasibility studies in the grant application. And what this is really doing is looking for quick build projects at intersections. So not necessarily concrete, might be restriping projects, might be flexible bollard project, or something we can implement very quick to improve safety at intersections. We are also going to look at intersection studies for inclusion of left turn arrows. Our study identified left turns at intersections as one of the highest crash causes. So it's going to look at where we can add arrows. We are also going to continue with stakeholder engagement. We realize that we can construct all we want, but it also comes down strictly to driver behavior. So there's going to be a large outreach component with this grant. As far as construction, we have 3 different projects we're going to be working on. On Magnolia Avenue, we're going to do some crossing improvements at 3 different locations. As you may be aware, Magnolia Avenue has large bike lane / parking on either side of the road, and then it's a 5-lane section, so it's an extremely long stretch for pedestrians to cross. Signalized intersections are far apart, and we just have a lot of pedestrians just trying to cross wherever. So we're going to look at 3 intersections, and whether it's at pedestrian refuges, rapid flashing beacons, or shortening the crossings at each of those intersections. We are also using the grant to fund our Broadway Streetscapes project. This is currently in design. This project is completing a missing link in our first Creek Greenway in North Knoxville, so directly in front of the Kroger on Broadway. There's a greenway on either side, and this project will fund the construction of that greenway. We're hoping to go to construction next summer. The final project this grant is going to fund is our Woodland Complete Street. This is in the same area on Woodland Avenue right by Broadway. Currently it's a 4-lane roadway. The project is going to road diet this road to a 3-lane section. It's going to add a greenway extending off the first greenway that connects to the bike lanes on Woodland, and it's going to extend a sidewalk and do crossing improvements. So we think that'll have a significant safety impacts, especially being near a Kroger, also adjacent to the high school. And that pretty much covers what our grant is going to cover. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything.
I've got a question about the separated bike lanes or the flexible bollards. I've noticed like on 5th Avenue and Broadway where those are installed. I guess the current street sweepers can't get to the curb to sweep that lane. And I think we've got some sort of miniature sweeper. Perhaps that's just for the CBID area, but the ongoing maintenance and cleaning of the separated bike lanes, is that something that's in part of the plan or capable to be used grant money for?
The mini sweeper that city bought either last year or the year before, that was for active transportation. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's used a lot in the CBID and Market Square, but it was specifically funded for active transportation, so protected bike lanes. Okay. I believe that should be able to fit behind the protection on Broadway. We've had a lot of construction out there. CARM has been working on a driveway, so there is a little more construction mess on that street, but we should be able to maintain it with that sweeper.
Thanks.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I appreciate it. Nope.
I got a question, John. This is just in your opinion. When we're reviewing the agenda items, what should we as planners keep in mind to help promote walkability, good walkability within the city of Knoxville? That would be the most impactful for you and for it to increase walkability in the city.
Of course, sidewalks, but I think safe crossings of the roadways are really the most important. And as I don't know if that's what you all would get into, but you look at corner radiuses. If you have this gigantic corner radius, it's going to be it's going to make the crossing much longer, and it's going to allow vehicles to go around the corner a lot faster. I think anything with bulb outs, I think pedestrian signals, of course. Wide sidewalks are great. Protected bike lanes around sidewalks makes people walking feel much safer. Minimizing driveways. Keeping the sidewalk level through the driveway rather than lowering the sidewalk down and making, basically designing this driveway around the pedestrian more than designing the driveway around the car. So the car actually has to go up, cross the driveway, then go up again to get into the parking lot. Keeping sight lines good, keeping access to the door of whatever facility very accessible to pedestrians. Often you have a parking lot in between the sidewalk and the front door, and the pedestrian has a very hostile area to walk through to actually get to a building. Those are a few things I can think offhand.
Just one quick, and you may have already answered this, John, but so how much is the actual grant?
$8 million, so it has a 20% match. So we're doing $10 million of projects.
Great. I mean, and is it all available in 2024, or is it spaced out over time?
It is available in 24. The projects, I believe, have a 5-year time period to build them all. The city already had funding for the construction of the Broadway Greenway in the Woodland, and so we are using some of that money that was set aside for construction to cover the match amount.
Well, very good. Great job in getting all that done. It's a tremendous amount of work that'll be well received, I believe, in the city of Knoxville. So good job. Thank you.
Yeah, we just hired a Vision Zero coordinator, so they're going to have their plate full, no doubt. All right, thank you.
Thank you, John. Me to go? Okay. Okay, our next agenda item that we want to cover is the Knox County's Land Use and Comprehensive Transportation Plan. We're going to give you all just a brief presentation just to orient you back to this. And to kick us off, we have Mandy Benedict from the Mayor's Office. We also have Kathy Olson and Jim Snowden from Engineering Public Works. And Mandy, just so you know, we have one of our staff members who's running the slides. I'll just say next slide.
Thanks, Amy. All right, first we will start on who's running. Okay, there we go. There's the agenda. We'll look at the relationships, the plan relationships, kind of review our comprehensive plan and implementation, and then Amy will go over drafts that are all on the website. Next slide. First, we have a new document, and I think you have it in front of you. It just shows our plan relationships, where we are currently at, which is the growth plan, and then we have our general plan supported by sector plans. We are trying to move to the growth plan with our comprehensive plan supported by small area plans. One thing that we heard is Knox County really likes their individual communities. The Choteau area, Halls, Powell, those are very special to the residents of Knox County, so we can supplement our comprehensive plan with those. Next slide. This is the process that we have taken, and most of you have been here throughout it all. We are finally at our adoption phase, hoping to be done by the springtime. Next slide. This is a slide that you've seen too. It just shows a comprehensive view of what we were trying to achieve. One thing that I like to point out here is that unified strategy. If you look at our policies and actions within the comprehensive plan, you'll see that there are a lot of community partners listed. We have the chamber, we have legacy parks, we have planning, engineering, and public works. So we are trying to look at this plan unified. Next slide. Who all was involved? This is added in here to remember some of the loudest voices that we're hearing right now have been a part of this process the whole time. We had members on the advisory committee, we had technical committee experts, stakeholders, members of the public. All of our legislative bodies have been involved during the past 2 years. Next slide. Public engagement, I just want to point out during round 1, we had over 400 participants online and in person. Round 2, which was a very important part of this process because it was choosing our preferred scenario of how we're going to grow. We had over 4,000 people involved in person and online. Round 3, we had over 800 residents involved. Next slide. Next, we'll go into our comprehensive plan, just do a high-level review of what you will see in the document. Next slide. This is the future land use map. It is on the website. There's also an interactive map on the website that you can go and zoom in parcel-based streets so you can see the place types around Knox County. And I'll hand it off to Jim Snowden, and he will focus on the transportation aspect.
Yeah, thank you, Mandy. Yeah, this obviously, as Amy has mentioned several times, is the first time the county has ever had a comprehensive plan that included the alignment of transportation projects as well as land use. One of the things that we heard early on from the mayor and the county commissioners, as well as you guys and the public, was that our transportation network was reactive to development, and that's something that we need to be better about. And that's what this plan is really focused on. We wanted to align our capital projects with growth. You'll see one of the next slides we'll talks about the growth that we're proposing in Hardin Valley is going to be supported by a very large infrastructure project in Hardin Valley. Some of the other small area studies we'll talk about will support in future fiscal years the growth in the other parts of the county that are expanded in these areas. Some of the other things we want to do is implement ways in which we can allow more walkable development, to allow more town center development, as well as just provide redundancy in the transportation network that realistically we don't have in Hardin Valley. So we're kind of learning from some of our mistakes in the past. Next slide, please. And speaking to really putting the money where it's most needed, obviously anybody that's drove through Hardin Valley know it has a lot of challenges. We're going to invest $6.5 million in the fiscal year upcoming to do a couple of things. We're going to partner with TDOT that is working on a new interchange at Watt Road at I-40. We're going to expand Everett Road north into the west side of Hardin Valley. That project was identified as part of the Hardin Valley Mobility Study that was completed a few years ago. That project will include a 4-lane median divided facility kind of along kind of where I guess the Vulcan Quarry is, if people know where that is, and kind of extending up through Buttermilk and into Hickory Creek. And then we're also going to work on expanding existing Hardin Valley, the improved section, the curb and gutter section of this 3-lane to bump out some curbs, add additional capacity there, as well as provide additional capacity, potentially a 4-lane median divided west of Steel Road to really allow for, if you'll notice in the plan, a lot of different types of growth that we're proposing in that area. So want to be very conscious to have that transportation improvement in advance of it. One of the other things we're going to do, I'm sorry, go back one slide. There's also going to be some $500,000 that we had in this upcoming budget, as well as $500,000 in the current budget, fiscal year 24. We're going to do some small area studies. Some of the growth that we're proposing, I guess the next biggest area of growth is in the RITA community. Obviously, there's some concerns with the roads in those areas and infrastructure. So we want to do and embark upon, hopefully in the next 60 to 90 days, really an East Knox County mobility study, so that we can identify projects, capacity, safety, and pedestrian projects that need to support that plan. And then fiscal year 26, you'll start to see projects like we have at Hardin Valley at Everett in East Knoxville to support that plan, so that as that development occurs over the next 20 years, those transportation improvements are in place. One of the other things that this body heard, I think, a couple of months ago was some of the challenges in transportation in the Choteau Peninsula. That's something that we're going to do a little deeper dive in and do an area study down there to look at how to provide redundant routes north and south and east and west in that community, because you have, as Commissioner Levinson knows very much, you have North Shore Drive running east and west and Choteau Harvey running north and south, and that's about it. So we need to improve upon that. We're also going to look in areas where the plan's proposing additional growth in South Knoxville and along Straw Plains Pike. So those are things that we have upcoming that we want to be very intentional about. Next slide, I'm sorry. And this is just a map overlaid of all the transportation projects that were considered as part of the plan that you have in front of you. We kind of identified really 4 main projects or types of projects. We had safety projects, obviously intersection improvements, shoulder improvements, things like that. Capacity projects, which include those, taking a 2-lane to a 4-lane, adding turn lanes, adding signals. We also want to look at modernization, which is taking a lot of our, 2-lane roads that probably are okay in alignment, just need improved shoulders and need some safety enhancements for the growing traffic in the community. And then lastly, obviously, one of the things we heard a lot about was multimodal. We want to make sure, just like Mr. Livengood was saying, that pedestrians and bicyclists have safe and accommodating facilities. We're in the process of letting Canton Hollow Road here in the next few months. That project will make that road safer, but also it has a sidewalk on one side and a 10-foot wide greenway on the other. So as part of our capital projects, we always look to those things to make sure that they're accounted for. One of the other things that we wanted to do as part of this plan that we have never done before is have a parks component. And that's where I'll turn it over to Kathy Olson, and she'll go through the analysis that was completed for the parks.
Thanks, Jim. Next slide. So some of you may be aware of a companion plan that was undertaken with Kimley Horn, the same consultant that did our comprehensive plan with us. It was the System-Wide Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and it looked at the provision of facilities and recreational opportunities through our current offering of parks here in Knox County. So it was looking and comparing what we offer in Knox County against the National Recreation and Parks Association standards to really look at and make sure whether we have enough lacrosse fields, basketball courts, pickleball courts, and things like that. So it wasn't as much concerned with locating areas that we need to provide new parks in Knox County. So instead, what we did as part of this comprehensive land use plan, on page 22 of your document, when you have time, is we looked at kind of that horizon year land use layout, which is represented by the future land use map. We looked at the place types that represented areas where there would be residential developments. So we were looking at suburban residential, mixed-use town centres, places where families would be located. We laid that out against where we currently have park and recreational opportunities. And we said, how far away are these locations from existing park opportunities? Are they outside of a 1-mile walking distance or a 1-mile street buffer? And we shaded those on a map that you'll see on page 22 as a park desert. So I want you to remember that this is looking forward to the horizon year. If development occurs the way we expect it to, and we do not provide any additional parks opportunities, these areas would be in what we would term a parks desert based on a 1-mile walking distance standard. Now, that doesn't give us a lot to go on in terms of priority. So what we did was we supplemented this analysis with another map. Can you just go to the next slide, please? which we labeled priority areas for park investment. So knowing that development isn't going to look like the future land use map overnight, it's going to take about 20 years for us to kind of get to that build out stage, we looked at where there are current dense addresses. So that gives us kind of an analysis of, okay, where are we currently experiencing park deserts based on our existing development patterns? And these are the areas that pop up. So what this does is it gives us a kind of pathway forward to where we might want to prioritize investment. We can also look to that future land use map and the park deserts to anticipate where future growth might occur, and we might be able to purchase land at a cheaper price. So between those two things, between those two analyses, we get what we need in order to go after additional funding opportunities and locate those new parks areas in conjunction with where we think development will occur. Do you mind just going back to the last slide? So because neither of these plans, neither the parks analysis that we did in the comprehensive plan, nor the system-wide parks and recreation master plan have superseded, in terms of scope, the existing plans, the 2009 Parks Plan and the 2020 Corridor Greenway Feasibility Study Plan, those are still in effect. So we will still be referencing those as we go through and assess development and look for opportunities to partner with developers to provide some of those facilities. And I think we're on to implementation. Oh, sorry, fiscal impact.
I'll speak briefly about this. You guys have seen this, I think, slide several times, so I won't belabor it too much. But one of the things that Mayor Jacobs and the commission really tasked us with was, making this plan and our growth over the next 20 years to be fiscally responsible and sound. So we had a subconsultant of Kimberly Horn, Nittigrat, that did a lot of analysis with this, looking at, expected tax revenues associated with these, these new types of growth, as well as the cost to serve, resulting in a fiscal impact. Next slide, please. So what we determined, or what we found out, is that essentially the growth, I guess, the procedures that we currently have in place are not really financially viable. They're putting us in a situation where about $2 million in an annual deficit, whereas the preferred scenario with all the different types of place types that's codified in the plan will allow for a lot different types of development that is within the county that ultimately gives us almost a $5 million net or surplus. So the net of that's about $7 million that would be received by the county annually. So that was essentially checking that box that the mayor wanted us to really look closely at to make sure that that one of his things was big fiscal responsibility. So we wanted to make sure that was so that box was checked, and just wanted to make one last mention of that. And then I think the next slide, as Kathy mentioned, is implementation, and Ms. Brooks will discuss that.
Thank you, Jim. So implementation starts on chapter 3 of your plan. It starts on page 51. I just want to make note of there's 26 pages of this plan devoted to implementation. That was very intentional. I'm not going to review each item with you. We reviewed many of them with you during your workshop, and hopefully you've had a time to review them since the plan's been posted since October. But I just want to reiterate that the goal is really to make this a plan that doesn't sit on a shelf. That's often a critique of our planning efforts, not just here locally, but across the country. So it's very intentional that we want to make sure that this is a plan that is going to help move Knox County forward. Next slide, please. So our proposed, the plan is the basis for all public and private decisions that are made related to land use and transportation. So this is meant to inform work programs, approvals that you all recommend going to county commission on a monthly basis, capital improvement projects, economic incentives. Our proposed work program, for example, assuming adoption of this plan, includes 23 new items associated with implementation. So we're already thinking ahead to what that's going to look like. As Mandy mentioned earlier, there's a number of entities that this plan is intended to engage and help inform their efforts, not just us here at Planning and at Engineering and Public Works, but Parks and Recreation, the Health Department, Knox Heritage, the Transportation Planning Organization, Legacy Parks, and others. Next slide, please. So the plan incorporates an implementation and maintenance schedule. Plan amendments will be considered on a quarterly basis. And on an annual, we will provide an annual assessment of the plan to this body as well as County Commission. Yes, there will be an annual, I can move this closer. Does that help? There will be an annual assessment of the plan that will be provided to this body and then forwarded on to County Commission. And some of the things that we'll look at is the number of plan amendments that have been requested, any trends in development that we're seeing, any challenges that have been identified with the plan itself, and recommendations that we might have to amend it. And then every 5 years, the plan will be reviewed for more major updates, and then it'll be based off of that annual assessment I just mentioned. And then a major update will be required every 10 years. Next slide.
Question there real quick. So just to clarify and dovetail on Rich, but it's able to be requested to be changed every
Quarterly.
Correct.
And yes, and that is a change from what we presented at the workshop.
Right. I think that's much better where we're.
So Appendix H includes a matrix. This is similar to the land use classifications table that we use and have used for many years. This will guide the review of applications during the interim period. Next slide. So now I really want to get into some of the plan revisions that we've incorporated. I just want to make note that this plan has been adopted. It has been posted since October 2023. And we have been continuing to take feedback and trying to be as responsive as possible. So I want to start with Chapter 2, the framework. We've updated primary and secondary modes in the mixed-use districts to clarify primary versus secondary. That was a comment and a question that came up during your workshop. We've added additional information to the description of several place types to specify location criteria. We've added a new rural agricultural place type specifically focused on farming. We've also provided additional clarification to criteria for the placement of new business parks and connectivity expected in the corridor mixed-use place type. We've also added a new area for future study that Jim has already touched on in the Choteau Peninsula area. Next slide. Nope. Next slide. All right, Chapter 3. Implementation. I have several slides associated with this. Again, this is a major focus of this plan. So we've added Knox County Schools as a partner to engage in 9.1, and we've added a new action item specific to annual coordination between the county planning and Knox County Schools. This was also some feedback that we received during the workshop. We've changed the plan amendment request schedule from annually to quarterly. I just mentioned that. We've added a reference to preserving natural heritage to action 7.1. Added additional criteria to be considered as part of a new historic resources inventory, and that can be found in action 8.4. And a new demolition delay option for historically significant properties in the county has been added. Next slide, please. We've added a requirement for training to be provided to elected and appointed officials related to this plan. We've strengthened the language of Action 2.4 to encourage preservation of open space, added an application requirement for applicants to reference the adopted comprehensive plan and their request for any plan amendments, and added additional language to better articulate the requirement of land use decisions to be consistent if this plan is adopted. We've strengthened the criteria for a plan amendment update beyond an error in the plan to require a meeting of 2 of the criteria, and I'll go over that in just a second. Next slide. So that can be found here. So this is on page, I can turn to it quickly, of your plan if you want to take a look at it. Yeah, page 72. It's in the blue box on the right-hand side. We received quite a bit of feedback related to the plan amendment criteria. So an obvious or significant error or omission in the plan would be justification to amend the plan. And then otherwise, it would require 2 or more of the following criteria that's listed, those items 1 through 4. Okay, if we could go to the next slide, please. I'm just wondering if we've missed a slide here. hold on one second. You have a question?
So just
Chairman?
just to clarify that currently it requires one versus two
Correct.
criteria.
Correct, yes. So that is a change to be considered. Okay, Appendix H. I already touched on this. We have updated the place type and correspondence matrix. Those updates include adding the rural agricultural place type that I mentioned, distinguishing between densities allowed in the planned residential zone, and then providing additional clarification on how this matrix will be used to inform the decisions that you all will make on a monthly basis as well as County Commission. And it's really not a change in practice on how we do things. It's just putting it into writing, like how we will evaluate requests for plan amendments. Okay, next slide. We'll just talk about next steps. You can click to the next one, Whitney. So you all will consider this for recommendation to County Commission on March 7th. County Commission would like to have a workshop, so they've scheduled that for March 21st, and then they will consider your recommendation on March 25th. Are there any questions for the team right now?
Can you elaborate, Amy, on what the changes were for the Choteau Road? I know that Jim had mentioned the fact that y'all are going to do the assessment. What else was included in here for Choteau Road?
There's a couple of projects. We've got an existing project down there where we're going to do some modernization along North Shore Drive, including adding, the lanes now are probably 10 to 11 foot. We're going to make them consistent 11 foot, as well as add a 2 foot wide paved shoulder and put safe slopes along the side of the road. A lot of areas have pretty steep slopes. But in addition to that, we also are going to do essentially an area-wide study to identify additional projects above and beyond that would then show up in a future fiscal year request for improvements, like maybe, potentially long-term. I mean, ideally, it'd be great to get rid of that one-lane underpass down there at Boyd Station. Obviously, that's a multi-million-dollar project, so we'd have to, but that study would identify things, and we'd be able to look for some grants and different funding sources to try to find some of those larger projects funding. So. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Mandy reminded me too. One of the things we did do, there's some vacant parcels down there that are currently zoned agricultural. We did, I think originally we had them as an SR place type. We have converted that now to a rural living place type to just allow for the the preservation of that area until such time this study and some of these improvements can be made.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our next agenda item. We are going to agenda item number 7, and Ms. Warner is going to give you an overview of this sector plan and rezoning request.
Okay. This is a sector plan request from medium density residential to medium density residential office, and a rezoning request from planned residential up to 12 dwelling units an acre to the OB zone office, medical and related services. This site is 18.07 acres, and it's at Outlet Drive and Snyder Road. The adjacent property to the west was rezoned in 2015. The applicant had requested PR with a density up to 18 dwelling units an acre, along with the plan amendment to HDR. Planning recommended approval of the PR zone with up to 12 dwelling units an acre and denial of the HDR land use class because the property did not meet the general plan's criteria for the level of density. The requested density was out of character with the surrounding area. However, the requested HDR land use was approved, and the PR zone with up to 18 was also approved. The Outlet Drive to Snyder Road extension has been completed. Outlet Drive's a 2-lane street with a turn lane that connects Level Road to Campbell Station Road, just north of I-40. There's a greenway along the north side and a sidewalk along the south side. This infrastructure makes medium density appropriate at this location. Densities more than 12 dwelling units an acre would be out of character with the immediate area. And this site also lacks access to transit. The MDR land use classification is appropriate as it's a transition between HDR and LDR. MDRO is slightly more intensive than MDR and allows more uses and densities higher than 12 dwelling units an acre. This property is also within Farragut's urban growth boundary. The proposed future land use map classifies this as suburban mixed residential with a housing mix type of single-family subdivisions with small lots and attached residential such as duplexes, multiplexes, and townhomes. They're the scale of a single-family home. The OB zone is considered partially related to this place type. The zoning district could be appropriate, but with qualifications such as development plan with conditions. However, the growth policy plan and comp plan have not yet been adopted, so this request is subject to the policies and plans that are currently in place. The proposed OB zone is intended to provide areas for professional and business offices and related activities that require separate buildings and buildings grouped by landscape yards and open areas. The OB zone allows any permitted uses in the RB zone. The RB zone allows houses, duplexes, multifamily dwelling units, up to 12 dwelling units an acre by right, and 24 dwelling units an acre through the use on review process, and some non-residential uses. This location is not appropriate for densities above 12 dwelling units an acre. At the existing density of 12 dwelling units an acre on this property, a maximum of 218 units can be built. At a maximum density of 24 dwelling units an acre, a maximum of 437 units could be built. There's a small section of hillside protection on the property up in the northwest corner. There are also some closed contours on the site, which indicate the potential presence of sinkholes. These environmental challenges make the current zoning of PR up to 12 an appropriate zone for the property, since they would be clustered together. So the recommendation is to deny the sector plan amendment to MDRO because it's not warranted with the current PR residential up to 12 dwelling units an acre. The hillside protection would be retained, and to deny the OB zone because it's inconsistent with the surrounding area and sector plan. Do you have any questions?
Ms. Warner, the property right next to it that has a condition, do you know what that condition was?
Yeah, it's that they would only have access to Outlet Drive and not to Snyder Road.
Okay. The other question I had, you mentioned that, so with our unpassed comprehensive land use and transportation plan, how do you think this request would fit into that if this were to be in front of us, if that were passed?
Well, we didn't look at that comprehensively, but the OB zone is one of those on that matrix that we were talking about where it says it could be partially related. So it
Could potentially be considered, yeah.
Whitney, I've got a question too. So generally, I guess we certainly want to buffer residential from higher density type uses, but is office, whatever type of office zoning, is it not generally considered a buffer between higher uses and residential?
Yeah, the office zone's pretty similar to medium density residential in terms of buffering.
I guess my question would be, if an applicant came in and applied to build an office complex there or something like that, would staff be comfortable with that? Or is it in office, as a buffer? Because I've always viewed office as a type of a buffer between whatever, it could be commercial or a higher density residential and a lower density residential. So I guess I'm just trying to get my mind around the MDRO versus MDR hang up in there. just kind of thinking out loud. But I don't really have a problem with the MDRO. I think it's still a buffer coming between the higher density at 18 units. And I get that staff's trying to be consistent too, because the history I recall on it is, I think staff recommended against what you'd mentioned on the 18 units, but county commission thought it was still a good use. So the precedent's been set to me. So, I mean, I'm just not opposed to the MDRO, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and I've got one comment here too that I'm trying to wrestle with a little bit. I was a part of a lot of group that developed the eastern part of this main road with a bunch of office warehouse, and really between Lovell Road and Camel Station, that new road was connected. I think Sam Furrow did it back in the day, and there was even a conversation about doing a bridge over from Turkey Creek to Outlets to really have that whole parallel part of Turkey Creek and Outlets Drive function as a real heavily used commercial corridor. So, as you look at all the office warehouse east, and you look at Top Golf, and I think there's a boat dealership across the street, one of the largest RV dealerships around with Lazy Days, and I'm not deliberating here. I guess where I'm going with this too, Farragut has decided that they're not going to allow any more apartment development in Farragut. I think they've identified pieces of property that they'll allow for apartment use, but no more. And so as that becomes the most, one of the most fastest growing parts of our county, to not allow density on really what I would, or office on a commercial corridor doesn't quite resonate with me. And I think that the lay of the land here is a little unique in that all of these subdivisions that we're looking at do not access Outlets. They go out a different way, and they just happen to be backing up to this commercial corridor that was built by Knox County and Farragut, and really a lot of folks that thought that this ought to be a sales tax grab area. So I'm a little torn on how that played out.
Whitney, my question is about you said that the proposed density would allow it to go up to 24, correct?
So the OB zone, through use on review, can go through up to 24 dwelling units an acre, by right up to 12.
So hearing you speak about the case made me look at this from not the, not how the property faces the road, but how it's bracketed between two existing developments. So it seemed like the rationale was if it would allow 12 by right and up to 24 by special permission. Did I get it right?
Use on review.
Use on review. That it would potentially allow up to 24 abutting single family residents there. So which really wouldn't be a sort of transition from one to the other. It would be putting a higher density in between two lower, which seems problematic. Yes? Is this part of the thinking?
Yes.
Any questions?
Not to get into comments, but the comments were from the neighbors who actually back up to this, that they were for the development to be the way it was asked. And, I mean, that's the ones I'd be worried about. And I'm kind of wobbly on it myself, just for the simple fact that they went out to the neighbors and got their support. I actually read those things, by the way, and they're interesting. But to get that support ahead of time kind of opens my door a little more. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? No? Okay. Let's move on to the next item, agenda item number 10, 3D24RZ.
This is a rezoning request from agricultural to planned residential up to 5 dwelling units an acre on 23.09 acres on Woodale Road near Ruggles Ferry Pike. The current sector plan is LDR. It's in the East County Sector Plan, which allows consideration of up to 5 dwelling units an acre within the county's planned growth area. The hillside protection area is along the rear of the property, and the recommended density from the hillside and ridgetop protection plan is 4.34 dwelling units an acre. We will be recommending the condition that the area along the rear of the property line with slopes of 25% or higher be left undisturbed. At the requested density of 5 dwelling units an acre, this property could accommodate up to 115 dwellings. At the recommended density of 3 dwelling units an acre, a maximum of 69 units can be built, which is more in line with the surrounding development. There have been some agricultural to RA and PR rezonings at densities up to 1 to 7 dwelling units in the area. The property is located approximately 1.5 miles north of Asheville Highway, a major commercial corridor for the community. This corridor has seen many agricultural to commercial rezonings. The East County Community Plan includes this property within the plan's rural area, and this is different from the growth policy plan. The rural area is defined as areas appropriate for low-density residential development and open space and agricultural land uses. The preferred development pattern of rural and agricultural areas is described as mostly farms and large residential parcels along county roads, with lower density residential neighborhoods and some limited commercial activities. The recommendation is to approve the planned residential zone with up to 3 dwelling units an acre instead of the requested 5 dwelling units an acre, because 3 is more consistent with the surrounding development. And one condition recommending the area along the rear of the property line with slopes of 25% or higher to be left undisturbed. Any questions?
Hey, Whitney, is this the one that an updated version of the staff report came out?
Yes, the condition wasn't listed. It was written kind of in the body of the staff report, but not under the approved PR at 3, subject to one condition.
Okay, so that was, I guess my question was, what changed in that, or it was just?
Just forgot to list that condition that the parcel with 25% of the slopes, 25% or greater.
Great, thank you.
For this site, would what's allowed or permitted be any different with the comprehensive land use plan? Like, do you know if there'd be any differences in that from?
I believe this one was suburban residential, but then it also had partial rural living on it.
Yes, that's correct. On the back side, it was a little bit of rural living. Any other questions? All right. We'll move on to agenda item number 11. This is also a sector plan and rezoning request.
This is a sector plan amendment request from agricultural to low-density residential and a rezoning request from agricultural to planned residential up to 3 dwelling units an acre. It's on 11.4 acres along Sevierville Pike east of Basilfield Drive. This property is just a mile away from the major commercial node at East Governor John Sevier Highway and Chapman Highway. This property is in the rural area. The rural area of the growth plan allows densities up to 3 dwelling units an acre. The requested LDR allows up to 5 in the county's planned growth area. The rural area considers rural residential, which allows up to 1 dwelling unit an acre, where dwellings are clustered in one portion of the subdivision. Approximately 43% of the property is within the hillside protection area. The slope analysis recommends a density of 2.32 dwelling units an acre for the property. This property is within the proposed planned growth area, and the future land use map classifies this as suburban residential. However, those plans haven't been adopted, so we aren't looking at those today. The recommendation is to approve the sector plan to the rural residential land use classification because it's consistent with development in the area. The hillside protection area would be retained, and approve the planned residential zone up to 1 dwelling unit an acre because it's consistent with the rural residential land use classification in the surrounding development, subject to the one condition that the rear of the parcel with slopes up to 25% or greater, approximately at the 970 contour line, shall be left undisturbed. Any questions?
Questions, comments? Okay. Thank you, Whitney. Okay, now we'll move on to agenda item number 6. Applicant is Benjamin Mullins. I'll take just a minute to change computers here. It's a sector plan and rezoning request. We also, cookies have arrived, so if anybody would like to grab a cookie.
What was that again? Window P. Woo. What happened? What?
They're still working. Do they be wanting to extend? Try to go back into it. All right, I did it again. That's normally what I do. Just go back to presenter now.
Looks like we're having.
Right, there we go. I'm gonna do that with the extend.
Yeah, she had it on PC screen only.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Okay, item number 6 is 2E24RZ, 2B24SP. This is a 112-acre parcel in the Hardin Valley area. It borders the Clinch River, and it's accessed on West Gallaher Ferry Road, which is a local street approximately 18 feet wide that leads to Hickory Creek Road, a minor arterial street to the south. This request is to rezone from agricultural to planned residential up to 2 dwelling units per acre, and to amend the sector plan from the agricultural classification to rural residential. The hillside protection and stream protection areas would remain. In the zoning map, you can see that most of the properties along West Gallaher Ferry Road are zoned agricultural, with the exception of one PR parcel along the arterial street to the south. There is a planned residential zoning property adjacent to the southeast where there is access to classified streets, different street network. There's a long-standing RA zoned area adjacent to the northeast, though there is no indication at this time that it will be built out in that way. It's been there a long time. And there is more PR zoning as you get further south towards the more intensive areas. The predominant land use classification north of Hickory Creek Road is agricultural to the west and rural residential to the east. The property is almost entirely in the hillside protection area, and there is some stream protection area to the northwest along Clinch River. There are also 2 blue line streams on the property, and that's the only part of this parcel that is not in the hillside protection area. The parcel is entirely undisturbed forest. Most of the lots along West Gallagher Ferry Road are single-family residences on very large multi-acre lots among dense forest. The existing land use along West Gallagher Ferry Road is mainly agricultural, forestry, vacant, or rural residential. In the slope analysis, you can see that almost half of the property has slopes exceeding 25% and about 13 acres exceed 40%. The recommended disturbance budget is 44.6 acres within the hillside protection area. It is in the rural area of the current growth policy plan shown here and the pending growth policy plan as well. Staff are recommending approval of the rural residential land use classification because the property's features meet the intent and location criteria for that land use. Rural residential is intended for very low density and conservation cluster housing subdivisions in rural forested areas, which reflect the existing land use in this area. Staff recommend approval of the PR zone because it allows for that cluster and conservation housing that is responsive to environmental constraints on a property, such as steep slopes and streams. We recommend a density of up to 1 dwelling unit per acre versus the requested 2 because it is more consistent with permitted density along this street. This property does not have sanitary sewer access, and it is on a narrow local street that has no shoulders and steep drop-offs. More density would be inappropriate given these conditions and the surrounding rural character. 1 dwelling unit per acre is consistent with the recommended density in the slope analysis as well. There are 2 recommended conditions. The first is an area of no disturbance, 450 feet from Clinch River. This section of the Clinch River is one of 2 rivers in Knox County and 19 statewide that have the Tennessee Scenic River designation shown in that image. Its intent is to preserve and protect select river segments across the state for their ecological, recreational, and other values. The standard boundary of this protected designation is 450 feet from the riverbank. So that's the origin of that condition. The second recommended condition is disturbing no more than 44.6 acres within the hillside protection overlay per the recommended slope analysis, the recommendation and slope analysis. And I'm happy to answer any questions about this one.
I do have a quick question. I remember back in the day, I guess when the hillside protection plan got, it was adopted. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I guess, if you don't mind waiting. It's a shall in the city of Knoxville, but it's a should. So you guys review that and take a look at it. But the document doesn't specifically say that they have to abide by the hillside and ridge top in the county only. Is that right?
It's correct. So the legislative body in the county did not adopt the plan. So we use it as advisory and to inform our recommendations, but they are not required to adhere to the plan like the city is.
Okay. And then moving forward with the new comprehensive plan that we've been talking about and looking at, is there any language in there that requires that too, or not require it, or?
To follow the hillside and ridge top plan in the unincorporated areas of the county?
Correct.
No, it's something that this body could introduce, but it would take legislative action to adopt it officially.
Okay, just clarifying. Thank you.
I do have a quick question about the buffer. I'm not familiar with that as a part of that river. Can somebody enlighten me as to, it's just literally from the bridge, I guess, on Solway Bridge on that section, because there's other development further down the river?
Yeah, there's 3 different classes of the scenic river designation. This is a class 3, which is partially developed. And the 450-foot buffer is specific to the class 3 designation. And the kinds of amenities that are highlighted in the Clinch River designation is kayaking, canoeing, and fishing. So it's highlighted statewide for those amenities.
Commissioner, does that answer your question? Are you?
Not really, because Director Snowden and I are looking at each other, and both of us seemed somewhat puzzled because I've never heard of it. It doesn't look like he has either. And both of us have been around for a long, long time. So is this, and I'm not denying that it's not out there, is this a part of our package, the details of the, okay.
I referenced the specific state code in the report, but also the web interface for this Scenic River program is really user-friendly and kind of fun to explore.
Because it would be interesting, on the river, obviously with slope and trying to cluster density, one would think there might be an opportunity to do some sort of small private marina and clustered condos or single family or something. And if you can't get to the water with that type of planned residential vision, that's a little unusual, but.
The disturbance, it's not part of, this is guidance from a statewide program. It's not a requirement, it's a condition that we're applying.
So Commissioner, we can provide you with some additional, or the whole body with some additional information to help inform whether or not you want to keep that condition or consider something else.
It also does align with the severest, slopes in the property, the most severe.
Did you say there was water but no sewer?
There is no sanitary sewer service along West Gallagher Ferry Road. That is indicated.
With respect to the sewer too, and I only say this because I developed Covered Bridge at Hardin Valley. I know, and we had to put in at the time the largest single wet well pressure pump in the entire valley at the time. That's probably changed by now. That was nearly 15 years ago. But theoretically, I would think you could pressure it up and go along the lot line somewhere in Covered Bridge, theoretically. I'm certainly not speaking for the applicant or the utility company out there, but I would say if there's a will, there's a way. If they wanted to get sewer, they could.
Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 25.
All right, this is 12B23SU. It's a 42-acre property southeast of the intersection of Alcoa Highway and West Governor John Sevier Highway. The request is to make changes to a previously approved planned district for Calvary Church to gain driveway access to Topside Road and expand the right turn lane on their driveway to West Governor John Sevier Highway. The property is zoned RN1, single-family residential neighborhood, but it has a previously approved planned district designation of RP1, planned residential, that overrides the base zoning per the transition rules in Article 1.4G. Most of the property was approved for an independent living sitter back in the 80s. And so this special use request is to make changes to that previously approved plan for further development of this place of worship. The site plan shows a proposed 20-foot wide driveway to Topside Road and a minor expansion of the existing driveway's right turn lane onto West Governor John Sevier Highway. The proposed driveway mostly follows the roadbed of a public right-of-way called Masterson Road that would need to be closed before the driveway is constructed. And I believe we just received that application today to close the right-of-way. The staff report provides a detailed summary of prior special use cases tied to Calvary Church's development. The most recent of which included a request for parking lot expansion in anticipation of a sanctuary building expansion, which is shown here to provide a total of 1,700 seats. A condition for approval at that time was that the highlighted section of the parking lot not be accessible until the church was expanded, so as not to exceed the maximum limit for the church's current 607 seat count. Since this significant future increase in seats is a known factor based on that prior special use case, it was requested that the applicant provide a traffic impact letter regarding the requested access and expansion in this special use case. However, it is important to note that the additional darkened parking areas and the church building are not within the scope of this special use request, and that would be reviewed at a later date when the plans are available for that. A survey by the Knoxville Police recommended a secondary entry and exit point to improve emergency access and safety. The traffic study showed minimal vehicle delays and queues on Topside Road. However, it did strongly emphasize the need for a secondary access point to relieve current congestion and especially projected congestion at West Governor John Sevier Highway with the future church expansion. Staff are recommending approval of the special use request subject to 6 conditions. The applicant is contesting one of those conditions, which have since been revised. I misread how the disturbance was reflected on the site plan. It appeared that the proposed development added 0.8 acres to a disturbance that was already several acres over budget. After further review, it appears it is slightly below that 14-acre disturbance budget threshold by about a half acre. The condition has been changed to say that any future disturbance in excess of what is permitted in the hillside protection overlay shall require a level 2 review. This condition would typically be standard procedure, but it is applied here because this property does exist in a gray zone with its previously approved planned district status from a time when the hillside protection overlay did not exist. Per the transition rules, if the property owner chose to develop this property exactly as it was approved under the RP1 district back in 1988, that would be permitted by right, and the current zoning regulations may not be applied. But since this is coming through special use, which is beholden to current adopted plans, the hillside protection overlay is being applied and enforced. That is being clarified with this condition. The applicant is contesting this condition as it was previously written, but they may contest it still. They provided email correspondence from a prior planner indicating that the property may be exempt from the hillside protection overlay because there was a grading permit previously issued. However, I looked into the scope of that grading permit and it was limited to parking expansion and a gazebo, which was never built. The entire lot was not issued a grading permit, and the entire lot is not exempt from the hillside protection overlay. Article 8.9's applicability standards do leave room for misunderstanding, and perhaps that should be addressed, but it is logical to conclude that a minor grading permit on a 40-acre site does not render the entire site exempt. This case has also been controversial, with concern being expressed by neighbors about the impact of a driveway to Topside Road, which is a narrow minor collector street. However, we do recommend approval because of the need for this driveway due to safety and traffic concerns. The traffic study did not indicate a significant impact to Topside Road. And in theory, if Masterson Road were to remain as a public right-of-way, it could be redeveloped, and a private driveway is likely more desirable for the surrounding community than a public right-of-way. Happy to answer any questions about this complicated one.
Has there been any discussion? I know originally when it was approved, it looked like they were going to limit access to Sundays and one day during the midweek. Is that still under consideration, or?
Not at this. So their main service hours are not at peak traffic times. And due to the concern about emergency access, it seemed inappropriate to gate it when there may be a need for it.
Jesse, can you clarify the condition, then the non-condition, and then the condition? You did so, but I saw the letter from the applicant, and I just want to make sure that I'm tracking correctly that originally there was a condition in the materials that we read.
Yeah, it's still there. It's as written there now. The way it was written before was that any future special use would require a level 2. And that was because at that time I thought they were already exceeding the disturbance budget. So here it clarifies that if it exceeds the disturbance budget, it would require a level 2 hillside protection review.
So it's not any future, it's just.
If it exceeds that disturbance budget.
Okay.
Seeing no other questions, we will move on to agenda item 22, which is the one-year plan for the city of Knoxville.
So this is our draft 2024 one-year plan update. There weren't any major overhauls done. However, there was some cleanup. So in chapter 2, we are proposing to remove the agricultural, conservation, and rural residential land use types because they have identical recommended zoning districts as the agricultural land use, which is the more widely used land use classification in the city. There is only one property with the agricultural conservation class and one property with the rural residential class in the entire city jurisdiction. And both properties meet the intent and location criteria of the agricultural class. So we are proposing having these land use classifications amended to agricultural, which would have no material impact on the properties. Chapter 2 and the Appendix B Land Use Index have been made virtually identical to ensure completeness with regards to intent and location criteria in both references. The Chapter 2 text was given priority, but there were some items in the Land Use Index that may have been missing from Chapter 2, and those were added. Text was only removed if it was redundant, inaccurate, or excessive. Those are subjective terms, so I'll provide some examples. Redundant meaning there were repeated references to the type of street classification a land use could access or multiple references to utility access. Inaccurate, one inaccuracy we caught was the general commercial land use made reference to how a limited range of warehousing and wholesale activities may be permitted, but those actually aren't permitted in any of the zones recommended by general commercial because it's considered more of an industrial use. And then there were just some superfluous details such as regional commercial mentioning 400,000 square foot typical building envelope, which was highly specific and maybe unnecessary. The only meaningful change to a land use type was to low density residential, which specified that slopes must be less than 25%. However, that's not really how this land use is applied in practice, and single family dwellings in combination with the enforcement of the hillside protection is one of the least intensive development types that's probably more appropriate for sloped areas. The other major change was removing Chapter 4, which focuses on conflicts between the one-year plan land use classifications and the zoning maps. The presumption being that there would be some grand governmental rezoning to bring all of these conflicts into compliance. There are over 1,600 of these conflicts, and this stems not from an error, but from the differing premises of zoning and land use. Zoning is generally more reflective of historic and ongoing uses of a specific property, whereas the land use classification reflects the future vision of that land use for that property or region. Any rezoning brought forth by a property owner must comply with the one-year plan. So if a conflicting property on this map was submitted for a rezoning, that conflict would disappear. This process is already described in Chapter 1. Planning is not proposing any broad governmental rezonings to resolve all these conflicts. Doing so could result in legal uses of a property suddenly being made illegal. Since we're not proposing that anything be done about these conflicts, we are recommending removing this chapter to reduce confusion about what it means. We conducted 2 public input meetings at the end of January and beginning of February, and there were no community comments made on the proposed changes or suggestions for other changes. Happy to answer any questions or comments.
Ms. Hillman, the conflicts that are removed, some of those conflicts were due to, after recode, RN3 and RN was initially included in LDR, right? Same thing with RN5, right? It listed a lot of those, right?
That is a common conflict.
Yeah.
And it was proposed in 2020 that RN3 be included in LDR and RN5 be included in MDR. That was recommended by Planning Commission at the time, but was denied by City Council at that time.
Thanks.
Jesse, by removing that LDR classification for parcels with slopes less than 25%, would that allow them to go in and kind of clear cut a slope that's higher than that if it was LDR?
No, this is more reflecting how the land use is actually applied. There are many sloped areas that have low density residential, and the hillside protection overlay would still be enforced in the city.
So, okay, so this is just for the city, it's not county.
It's just the city. It's the one-year plan, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Jesse.
And I did get, I have one quick note about special use case 3A24SU. We're recommending approval of this request to build 5 single-family homes on this property. The applicant will likely contest some of the conditions of approval, which include consulting with TDEC's Water Quality Management Division, landscape buffering, and in particular, a condition to not grade and fill the stream protection area, as shown here. A similar site plan was approved under the RP1 zone back in 2002. Since that time, there has been significant upstream development. The West City Sector Plan specifically calls out Fourth Creek, which runs along the northeast corner of this property, as the most subject to flooding in the sector. Planning staff are members of the American Planning Association, which does provide policy guides that inform our work. In this instance, policy guides on climate change and hazard mitigation make explicit recommendations about limiting development in the floodplains, as does the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation Floodplain Management Guide. These conditions on the special use do exceed the minimum stormwater standards required at permitting, but they're also reflective of changing conditions and concerns expressed in adopted plans. And we did share these conditions with engineering before applying them.
Okay. We're going to move on to agenda item number 33. This is a request by the city of Knoxville for a code amendment. I don't know who will be speaking to this item. I don't know if Mr. Barry. Okay, here we go. If we need to skip and come back to this item, we can. Would you like for us to, oh, here's Peter. Okay. I think Director Ahrens is going to speak to this item. Just hit the button there, the talk button.
There we go.
There.
Good afternoon, Peter Ahrens, Director of Plans Review and Building Inspections for the City of Knoxville. I'll give you the why as far as why this proposal is coming, and then my deputy, Brian Barry, will give you a lot more context as to how it will impact the balance of the city. With the removal of a functional family in the zoning code during the recode process, we now have a group that likes to try and build 24-bedroom duplexes. And they're predominantly in the Fort Sanders area for students, but we're seeing them spread out beyond there. We feel that's inappropriate to provide 4 parking spaces for 24 students. And so we're working on a long-term solution with our law department. I'd like to get together with planning to go through some of the possibilities. But really, the impact is for those that are trying to game the system and build massive single-family dwellings or duplexes with lots of bedrooms that are not intended for large families. Again, Brian will give you a lot more context. When we do see large homes built outside of the student housing area, they're predominantly on larger lots where there's plenty of parking. So the impact is not adding more impervious area on those large family houses. It's just intended to provide adequate parking for the rental space. I hesitate to get into distinguishing rental versus owned or property ownership, because we have folks that tell us what we want to hear in the permitting stage, and the realities are sometimes different. And now Brian will give you more context, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions afterwards.
Hello, Brian Berry with Plans Review and Inspections. I'd like to provide, I guess, a little bit of context here. I'm sure you guys are looking at this and have initial thoughts and concerns about why we are increasing parking. So hopefully this will give context to it and help you understand the impact that it will have based on what we're proposing. So bigger, broader picture across the city, and this is based on census data of 2022, we have 94,129 housing units. So that's across the city. In those housing units, 5 or more bedrooms make up about 2%. So there's not a lot of housing units with 5 or more bedrooms across the city. That's 1,817 units. So it's impacting a very small segment of residential development that takes place within the city. So what does it mean, though, for single family and duplex? Well, the proposal that we have only adds 0.65 per additional bedroom above 4 bedrooms. So the 5th bedroom and beyond would require 0.65 additional parking spaces per bedroom. So for a single family home, let's put that into context. If a single family home has 6 bedrooms, and right now they are currently required to provide 2 parking spaces. So based on the amendment, what they would be required to provide is 3 parking spaces. If you increase that to an 8-bedroom single-family home that was being built today, currently they're required 2 spaces, and the proposed amendment would require 5 spaces. But again, we're talking about 8 bedrooms for a single-family home. That's 2%, less than 2% probably, of the housing units within the city are being built with 8 bedrooms. So let's look at duplex too. The minimum parking requirement for a duplex is 2 per dwelling unit. So a total of 4 for 2 dwelling units. What this proposal would increase that to, if you had 6 bedrooms, it would increase that from 4 spaces to 6 spaces, so 3 each unit. So if you increase that as well, and you had a duplex that was doing 8 beds on each side for a total of 16 bedrooms, the current requirement would only be 4 spaces. But based on what we're proposing, it would be 10 spaces, so 5 each unit. And it goes on with townhomes, and we could elaborate there. But again, housing units totaling 5 or more bedrooms are a small fraction of residential development within the city. And what the focus is here is on developments, as Peter had said, that are looking to maximize bedroom counts in order to rent by the bedroom. And so these are the ones that we're seeing where people are proposing and building duplexes, single-family homes with 8, 9 bedrooms, or duplexes with 8 or 9 bedrooms on each side for a total of 18, 19 beds.
I've got a quick question for that. So you guys are looking at duplexes, it's 2 units, but you're still considering it one house? You had mentioned like a 3-bedroom. If you have a 2-bedroom duplex and a 2-bedroom duplex, you got 4. Then you have 3 and 3, you have 6. And then you were increasing is that?
Yeah, it's per side. So you have a duplex, and each side of the duplex is proposing 8 bedrooms. So that would be for a total of 16 bedrooms.
Right. I guess where I was is the trigger is between 2 and 3 bedrooms on the duplex, and then 4 bedrooms on a single family detached, or is it all on 4 bedrooms?
It's more than 4. So as soon as you hit the 5th bedroom is when the 0.65 comes into.
Okay, I must have missed
per dwelling unit, right?
Okay, because I must have missed it, because I thought I heard you say there's a 2-bedroom duplex. 2 and 2 is 4. And then
I should have said a 2-unit.
Because then it was duplex. Like 2 parking places for one side of the duplex and 2 on the other side of the duplex. Then when it went to 3 bedrooms on each side for a total of 6, it required 1 extra for a total of 6 parking places. That's what I heard. I may have misheard you.
I may have misspoke.
So it's still triggered on 4 bedrooms either way?
Correct. So
okay. Doesn't matter if it's a duplex or a single family or just unit. 4 bedrooms. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Berry, I got 2 or 3 questions I'm going to ask you. I'll probably ask again tomorrow in hopes that if you don't have the answers today, we can get them tomorrow. But is this a widespread problem? Is it confined to the fort? And then I'm going to ask you, are we applying it maybe more broadly?
It largely applies to in and around the Fort Sanders area. It's student housing, student-related housing.
But this will affect all of the city.
Sure, we are seeing it go outside of the fort.
Was there any consideration of looking at confining it in a different way where we address more specifically the fort rather than the whole city?
We don't think it's going to impact negatively outside of those dense residential areas like the fort, Mechanicsville, where it's small lots. Once you get outside of those dense areas into the suburban areas, we've got driveways that can house those extra, I don't mean to use the word house, but they can accommodate those extra parking spaces that are required.
What spawned this? What triggered this?
24-bedroom duplexes.
And how many has there been one occurrence that said, wow, we got to address this, or have there been several?
There's been several.
Really?
Yeah. Once Recode came into effect, we started seeing developers start pushing the envelope, and it took us a little bit to catch up. We caught up on the building side, on the building code side, and we're now catching up on the zoning side.
Yeah, I wonder if we're addressing one thing and maybe creating a different behavior. And one of my concerns is, a lot of cities around the country are going to no parking minimums. And this being really I call it's a special district for the university. I just think of a lot of students that don't bring cars to campus. You want to comment on that? I mean, I want to encourage them not to bring cars and.
Sure. I think that is what you're talking about is a more comprehensive look that's going to take more resources. I know that in South Knox, the neighborhoods reached out and they wanted to have a parking permit. So we put together a plan that was outside of my department. We did touch base with administration. They're aware. There is a parking issue in Fort Sanders in that area, as seen by BZA variance requests. And they've, in the past, say 12 months, they've started turning them down because there is a very real issue with parking. I know that not everybody brings their cars, and I think that this proposal recognizes that. We're definitely not seeking a 1-to-1 ratio. It's just a little bit, providing a little bit more, knowing that most people bring cars to campus.
Thank you.
I've got a few comments or questions. So with I guess this is a staff question first. So with our middle housing code allowing a duplex, is there a bedroom limit on those?
No, there's not.
Okay. And so I'm thinking a little bit more to what Peter said about some of these different neighborhoods like the Fort, Mechanicsville, like 4th and Gill. Those are all TDR neighborhoods. Sure. So So does our middle housing code, the parking requirement that we put in that, does that supersede this general zoning parking requirement?
I don't think, I think they're similar, but I think they're different topics. Middle housing is intended for affordable housing for non-students. Middle housing is for student housing.
It can be for anyone.
It's not affordable.
Though. So I guess my point is, or what I'm trying to draw is if our middle housing code within TDR areas that are outside of the Fort and downtown don't have a limit on number of bedrooms, but also our parking requirements supersede what we're proposing here, then this really in effect only does affect the Fort. I mean, it's applicable everywhere, but it's more applicable than saying we're sort of protecting other neighborhoods that are in TDR from a 18-unit duplex. I think, does that seem right, Ms. Brooks, the parking requirement?
I was
Yeah.
looking at the land use classification. Can you repeat that?
So our parking, basically, we don't have to have, you don't have to even build parking at all if you're within a quarter mile of transit, doing a missing middle or a middle housing structure of theoretically an 18 to 24 unit duplex. Okay.
I'd like to just quickly address that. So the middle housing standards do have a maximum depth to structures and a different height standard. So getting that many units or bedrooms in a house or a duplex might be complicated.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, I've got a lot to say that's more deliberation for Thursday, but this seems to be a solution. I mean, how many complaints have residents of the Fort submitted to the city about parking?
Those complaints don't come to me because they're in right-of-way. We do have issues with front yard parking where people are just parking wherever.
So South Knoxville, the neighborhood put together, or I guess complained enough where we put together a residential permitting system. I know when I was in college and did not live in the immediate area, I would drive in on the weekdays and park in the Fort as a non-resident. So I think that could be one solution to potentially help ease parking concerns, stop using it as a parking lot to come to class. Yeah, that's an idea.
I think if you see the development outside of the major, large student housing, you'll see oversized houses that are kind of out of context with everything else, but they can do it. So they maximize the scale, they maximize the number of bedrooms that they can get there. That's where I see that as different than the middle housing initiative. They function differently.
I've got a comment and question. The comment is about the South Knox area has been referenced a couple of times, and my understanding of that is not that the pressures there are different, that was a community that had been there for some time feeling pressures from commercial and a lot more activity in the area, taking parking, different from increased residential pressure in a residential area already. So just want to draw that distinction.
Sure.
But the question, I still haven't heard like where the complaint has come from. Like what actually, you and Mr. Berry noted that you're seeing more of these types of developments happen. And so it seems like maybe you're trying to get in front of more of them happening, but where did the complaint come from?
Well, recently you saw where the city partnered with, is it the Core Group, Hub Group, where they're building a parking garage because there's a recognized lack of parking in that area. Most of the residents are students, so they're not going to complain. But we, as we administer the code, we can see what's happening and recognize what's happening. And that's why we're bringing this before you, is because landlords don't care. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't speak for them. I'm not sure that they care as much as a homeowner that wants to live there full time. Again, we've just seen an increase in maximizing bedroom count. We've seen I've been with the city for 10 years. We've seen, when I got here, there was a parking issue in the fort. We've seen it get worse. And so this is just an opportunity to try and slow that down.
So are you guys trying to add more parking or limit the size of the building through this ordinance?
We're trying to make sure that the parking is more in alignment with the number of bedrooms.
And I would say you can think about this as, I'm sorry, this is Mike down here. People are building giant duplexes instead of multifamily because they can get more units on a property and with less. I mean, it's versus, creating an actual unit for each person. So it is definitely a workaround to try to get more on less.
What extent have you talked with the university? Because it's my understanding that the student body has a real problem with finding housing to begin with. And so if this is, I'm assuming, a two-part issue with parking and bedrooms, I'm not really getting a lot of clarification on what issue we're addressing with this. But in my mind, it seems like we're trying to address the bedroom issue because realistically, where the hell are you going to put 10 parking spots in the fort? It's already pretty developed. It's a concrete jungle. So my first question is, have you addressed the housing crisis with the university? And my second question is, where do you foresee these parking spots going, or is that just the justification to get to the bedroom issue?
To answer your first question, I've not reached out to the university.
Well, why not? If your point is to address the student housing issue in a student housing area, why have you not spoken with the university?
I don't have a good answer for you. Second question, where will they put them, the parking spaces? They'll have to reduce the number of bedrooms.
So the answer to everybody's question is that you're trying to reduce the number of bedrooms. It has nothing to do with parking.
It's both. It's making sure that there's enough parking for the number of bedrooms. So they'll put more parking on there. They'll maximize it off of the.
But you're saying there's no space to put the parking because there's not. So then my third question is with the university and the cities. They've stated multiple times, they had the whole Cumberland project to make it more pedestrian friendly, which by the way, I'm totally in favor of. So why are we now concerned about students being able to drive around? When our whole motive as a city and as a community is to make this all more connective and walkable and create more sidewalks, and now all of a sudden we have a parking crisis? And I'm sorry, I know I'm coming at you, and I know this is probably not all your fault, but you got chosen to stand here today, so.
What have you got?
I think, again, trying to provide, so parking requirements for multifamily dwellings, for apartment complexes, they are either required by the number of bedrooms, or they can be required if you are renting by the bedroom. So it's 0.67 per bedroom for a multifamily apartment complex. If a developer says I'm renting by the bedroom, that's how we would calculate it. So we took that and tried to apply it to, again, we're looking at 18 bedroom duplexes, 9 bedrooms on each side. Realistically, we know that that's what they're doing. They're renting by the bedroom. And so this similar with what is being applied to apartments that are saying they're renting by the bedroom is what we're saying here as well. That if you are renting by the bedroom, once you hit that threshold of 5 bedrooms or more, that's what's applied for each bedroom moving forward. So it's not, we're not trying to squelch development. We're just trying to make sure that adequate parking is being provided for a duplex if they're having 18 bedrooms and they're renting by the bedroom, but the code only requires them 4 spaces. So hopefully that makes sense.
For any of the new developments on the strip on Cumberland, we probably don't know or haven't talked to those owners of those bigger buildings with big parking lots, like how utilized are those big parking lots that they're having to build? I mean, I know they offer them to their tenants and what, but it might be interesting to see data on that. Because in my mind, it's sort of making me think that if these are being built in the fort with not much parking and people are renting them, I presume, maybe we require too much parking for both this and other types of multifamily development. Some data would be good.
This is not data, it's anecdotal, but I was speaking to a family from New Jersey who has a child that is living in one of the newer apartment buildings on Cumberland Avenue, and their child, their student, shares an apartment with 4 other individuals. So it sounded like it was a 5-bedroom apartment, and I think they had 2 parking spaces allotted for that unit. So it does sound, anecdotally, it sounds like for that, they had 2. I also anecdotally, the language around the 18-bedroom duplex, I'm hearing that sort of laden with people trying to get around something. And in cities where you've got a large university, that renting by the bedroom, that is a very common non-university run, yet obviously geared for university students, housing option. And many of them don't have parking at all. So just speaking to Commissioner's point about we've got multiple crises going on that we're trying to deal with, and it seems like when students need to be close to campus, they're looking for places to live. This is a viable option, and maybe the car is secondary.
I've got a few technical and intent questions and also some clarification. So for one, I'm very familiar with this topic because we've actually worked on a few student housing developments in Fort Sanders. And one clarification that I'll make, and this is kind of what you were saying, is when talking about the 19, 20 bedroom duplexes, or 8 to 10 bedrooms per unit, think of it more like a fraternity or sorority house where there's 16 bedrooms in one space with a shared common area. And all of these that I've seen, typically the common area is large, and compare that to a place that I lived in the Fort in college, which was I think maybe 4 units, but 20 bedrooms, and the kitchens were these little kitchenettes shoved in closets, that kind of thing. So it's really not too different than what Fort Sanders has always had in terms of the density, and really I think a lot of it has to do with cost related to when you're building, because a lot of the properties, I've toured a lot of existing properties in the Fort that are just in terrible condition, and frightening, from a health and safety standpoint. So I understand, but they're selling, they'll sell those to a developer for $2 million, and it's a rundown shack essentially, and then that person is going in and having to, fix it up to get rental. So I understand the psychology of that, and I, from a workaround standpoint that they mentioned, I think the biggest, one of the worst workarounds by taking the duplex or townhouse approach is circumnavigating kind of just avoiding the more stringent building codes of the IBC, and instead getting into the IRC. And from my understanding, y'all have taken control of that and are applying that. And to sidebar with that for a minute, are you all, with single family, for example, are you applying the IBC to that, even if it's one single unit with multiple bedrooms? Okay.
Yes.
So that's kind of some of my perspective context, but I do have a few questions for you all. My understanding is that to address the parking, you all were calling all of these independent living, Is that still the case, or is that not something that you can apply to these? What's the reason for doing this separate?
I was encouraged to back away from the independent living facility zoning designation.
Okay. Okay. In the parking regulations, it mentions the required for multifamily, and it's actually higher for multifamily. I think it's at 0.67 instead of 0.65, but it also has the language of rented by the bedroom, which I think is one that, I mean, I know that a lot of the developers will just have one lease and then they'll make the argument that I'm not renting it by the bedroom. Is there a reason you all didn't include updating that language in this?
That language is more greatly associated with the larger projects where everybody has a deadbolt on their door. These smaller projects, they don't function the same way. They're not as forthright as to how they're renting.
Gotcha. So do they stay under the independent living designation?
For which project?
For the small versions of that.
Right now, it's a duplex.
Okay.
We tried to mirror the parking regulations towards the independent living because that's how they function.
Yeah.
They don't function as a family. They function as individuals coming to live together.
But you're saying that backing away from that on the, even on the parking regulations? Okay. You mentioned, and there's been, and these are questions, I don't want to sound like I'm deliberating on this, but a lot of people have mentioned the question complaints, like where complaints are coming from. And you said that one sign of evidence for not enough parking in Fort Sanders is from BZA requests. Is that requests to not install parking?
For parking reductions, yes.
Okay. I'm curious how that indicates a need for parking.
It doesn't indicate a need for parking. It shines the light on everybody's maximizing their number of bedrooms. And I know that we want to be a walkable city. But on the flip side, we're building parking garages. And it seems like on these smaller scale jobs, it would be appropriate to provide parking for their residents.
Are there any, I don't know, do you all have any concerns from a stormwater standpoint of the additional impervious area that's going to be in the fort?
Nope. This does not impact the maximum impervious coverage that's permitted by the zoning code.
Okay. And you mentioned a parking garage that the city is building. I'm not familiar with it. Do you know where it is?
Which one is that? It's tied to the hospital, right? It's tied to the hospital, but part of that was some number of public parking spaces.
Well, and the hospital parking is one thing that has always kind of surprised me because there's a ton of parking associated with the hospital there, even though, there's over parking maybe in Fort Sanders, people using it as a parking lot for class, also the residents. I know that when we were going to doctor's appointments at Fort Sanders weekly, and when my wife was pregnant, we never really had problems, no matter what time of year, finding parking spaces on the street behind the, like just street parking behind the hospital. And I'm kind of curious with a lot of what other people have said, and curious if you guys have thought about this kind of approach rather than instead of requiring more on each individual lot. And again, that being a big limiting factor of the number of units that are able to be built. I mean, is there any consideration of getting the city to work with, kind of bring the hospital and UT to the table to address this from that standpoint instead of on the, because I mean, those are, yes, we can talk about developers trying to maximize dollars on lots, but they're small potatoes compared to the hospital and UT. So have y'all made any efforts on that approach?
I'm sure the administration has. I can't speak to their conversations, but I would imagine those were part of the conversations with the parking garage associated with the hospital.
Okay. And I guess my last question is one that's already kind of been asked about the complaints. If there's a way to maybe get the data of complaints from Fort Sanders and just see, because looking at something on a map and saying, and the trends, it may look one way, but then if there's no one, if the people are actually experiencing it are like, oh yeah, it's a little bit of an inconvenience, but 5 extra minutes to find a spot. I don't know, I would be very curious to hear that. So thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Director Ahrens. We're going to skip these last two agenda items out of respect of everyone's time, and plus the fact we have another meeting here after this one. So unless there are other items that need to be addressed, and I'll give you the opportunity. If there are, let's address them. Seeing no one that wants to address them, we're adjourned. Thank you.